title, Welcome to the Apocalypse, I am sure that in that moment you suddenly found yourself with several questions about the state of mind of your minister. I must admit that I am not usually a minister who pivots at the last minute and decides to go in a completely different direction than what was previously advertised. I am also a linguist by training. I understand wording and phrasing can bring about a myriad of different reactions, as I'm sure was the result in this case. I also feel it necessary and appropriate to insert a disclaimer at this point in my sermon. Please know that in the time since I have last preached here, and since the email blast was sent out last week, I have not gone off the deep end and become one of those preachers who stands on a street corner with a bullhorn and wearing a sign that says, "The end is nigh." Rest assured, this is not going to be one of those sermons either. The word apocalypse is one of those heavily charged religious words that intimidate people whenever it is seen or spoken. Often, that fear is turned into a commodity for some sort of monetary gain, such as Hollywood and television shows like American Horror Story, using it in the title of their shows or movies to entice people to tune in or buy a ticket and watch. It is also a word that is used by some churches to use the fear that it conjures up to illustrate why it is essential to adopt certain doctrinal positions that have often been used to do more trauma and harm than they have done any good. Regardless of the context in which it is applied, it is a word that makes many you use, including myself, squirm, because it evokes images of fire and brimstone and the end of the world that do not fit into how I view the world or come to understand theology. While it is true that the word apocalypse is usually reserved for a particular genre of religious literature that includes these themes, as well as other aspects of supernatural imagery, the word apocalypse itself comes from two Greek words, apo and kalypto, which both mean unveiling or unraveling. The idea is that apocalyptic literature would illustrate how the divine would overcome the forces of the world that were causing grief and torment and reveal a new world and a new future that would be ushered in. Believe it or not, apocalyptic literature was meant as a sign of hope for those who were suffering under persecution. It was a way to let them know that the divine was still out there and at work in the world, and that we as a people would be led to better and more prosperous times. I know all of this. I have written and preached on all of this before. I am the minister that is always trying to dig deep into the rubble of any mess of a situation and pull out the shred of hope that was there, the one that no one thought existed, and bring it to my congregation to let them know that there is still hope, that it has not gone away. That if we all come together to kindle and nurture the dying flame of hope, we can bring it back to life and make it a reality in our world. And yet, beginning of this month, when conflict erupted between Israel and Hamas that quickly escalated into a full-scale war, I found myself in that uncomfortable position of being a minister who felt compelled to say something, because not saying anything would be worse, yet not having or knowing the words to say. Not even having fully processed things enough to know where to even begin. The hardest part was hearing my friends and colleagues who all too quickly had something to say and watching them fall into us versus them camps. I have Jewish and Muslim colleagues that I have met in interfaith spaces who are deeply hurt by the actions in Israel right now. I have friends with ties and connections to both Israel and Palestine who naturally want to stand in solidarity with their respective people. Those of us in the West, especially here in the US, who are often spectators to this type of conflict, have been conditioned to reduce any sort of conflict down to Manichaean terms, with a hero or good person to root for and support, and a villain or bad person to hate and condemn. We have been told time and time again that conflicts are never that simple, that there are always two sides to every story, and that the truth is somewhere in the middle. We also never seem to want to listen to that prophetic wisdom when moments like this one arise. My personal stance on the entire situation is this. Ultimately, as a minister, I am here to care for and about people. Just as there is separation of church and state, I will always be on the side of people instead of governments. I stand with both the people of Israel and Palestine, and I mourn the catastrophic loss of life on both sides. I condemn the violence by both the Israeli government and Hamas that has taken place and has affected civilians. I support both my Jewish and Muslim friends and colleagues, and I condemn any and all forms of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I realize that this may be the first time that I have said anything from this pulpit as your minister with which you may personally disagree. It may be difficult for you to hear and with which to come to terms. But I want you to know, and I am here to tell you, that is okay. As much as we, as UUs, believe in freedom of the pulpit, where this is a safe space for the minister to share their thoughts and opinions, we also believe in freedom of the pew, where you have the right to disagree with my thoughts and opinions. My job as your minister is not to convince you to agree with every word that I say. My job is to walk alongside you on the personal spiritual journeys that we walk together, and to stay with you even when those journeys get difficult. In fact, I actually welcome your disagreements. It is through sitting with each other and doing the work of having difficult conversations about things and deeply listening to one another, even if we have to come to the realization that there are some things on which we are going to have to agree to disagree, that helps us to do the work of processing things and helps make things not quite so scary. I have been reading the book Breaking and Blessing by Sean Parker Dennison, one of my predecessors in this role as your minister, from which the two readings for today were taken. The entire book, much like the readings, is difficult to read in many ways. And while I find myself resonating with many of Dennison's words, I find myself disagreeing strongly with others. What I do hear in Dennison's words is a reminder that this faith that we practice is scary. It is messy. It is painful. It is frustrating. It is sometimes filled with more darkness than it is sunshine, and I hate that. It is also a reminder that ours is an active faith. Things like love and hope are not things that we happen to come across, nor are they things that go out of their way to find us. More often than not, hope and love are things that we have to actively seek out, create and drag kicking and screaming into existence. That is the unveiling that the apocalypse brings about. It is being presented with the reality that things are not always rainbows and butterflies. And if we want things like hope, we have to do real work to make them happen. This is exactly what it means to live in the tension. It is to acknowledge that darkness and conflict exist in the world. The goal is to not completely get rid of the darkness and conflict, nor is it to stick our heads in the sand and pretend like darkness and conflict do not exist. It is to choose hope, choose love, choose people, choose the things that are truly important to us and in this world, in spite of the darkness and conflict that we know exist, and to have that be what matters to us and for us as we move forward. It is not work for the faint of heart. It is not always work that gives one life. It is not work that one person can do alone. But it is work that we are called to do as people of faith. And thankfully, it is not work that we have to do alone. We can do it together if we choose to bring people along with us. I do not agree with Sean Parker Dennison in the second reading. I do not think it is important for us to remember that this world is ending, even if that may be the truth. But I do agree that it is necessary for us to find that we are the same, angel and human, and to find our common hope together. I am not sure that is enough to make the world begin again. I am not sure if that is even enough to change the world as much as I may want it to. But it is what I am choosing to hold on to in the midst of the darkness and the promise, hope that it may provide. May it ever continue to be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much. May we choose to hang on to hope and bring it forward in spite of the darkness and the chaos.